This series of presentations, this is actually the second in a series, is by far the hardest series of presentations I've ever given. I've talked about advanced frameworks before, explored actor framework, and all kinds of other things. This is a very difficult series of presentations because its scope is broad, and I think that it's very personal to each one of us. Everything an engineer needs to know that has nothing to do with engineering. And as I was mentioning to everybody kind of in the pre-show, as it were, this is part 2. I gave the part 1 version at a CLA conference a couple years ago, and again, I apologize to everybody. The abstract for this presentation is actually the abstract for that first presentation, where we talk about navigating political waters. And if you'd like to see that, that presentation, there's a QR code, feel free to scan it. That's the full presentation up online. Not to pat myself on the back by any stretch of the imagination. I've gone back and watched this presentation a couple of times and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good idea. I should be doing that. Anyways, that's your QR code. And that's me giving the presentation. So what was that presentation about? And what is this presentation about? This is not like, I figured out how to do it and I want to pass that information along. This is more like, I would love to serve all of you by saving you the pain that I have gone through in my career with various mistakes that I've made. So this is a bunch of proverbs, little lessons learned based on my failures. Some on my successes, but more failures than anything else. Part 1, the thesis statement. It's all about trust. The degree to which you're trusted will determine your, and I use the word political and define it in that first presentation, your political efficacy and your efficiency. If no one trusts you, it's going to, talk about Sisyphean, it's going to be like pushing a boulder uphill to cause any change in your organization. Until you're trusted, your hands are tied. So get trust and get it quick. That presentation is all about how you go about gaining trust as an engineer. This presentation, more thoughts on what I've learned in my career and lessons I've learned, or not. It seems like I keep on repeating some of the same mistakes. So it's helpful for me to go through all of this stuff as well. And again, I hope that everybody here benefits. What's that career look like? Because I've made a lot of mistakes in my career. So again, my name is Chris Cilino. If I haven't gotten the chance to meet you, I'd love to shake your hand, say hello, find out a little bit about you. I started my career, excuse me, at National Instruments back in 2005. Did applications engineering where I got the chance to hang out on the phone with customers just like you, hear about applications. It was really pretty sweet. Then I moved into DAC R&D, where I owned things like the DAC Assistant, and I always joke around. Has anybody here used the DAC Assistant before? A handful of people. Yeah, all the good stuff, that was me. All the bugs, that's somebody else. It's a lie. Anyways, in DAC R&D, that's where I got my, we'll say, professional training on software engineering and software development. And I learned a lot of incredible lessons. And then I moved into LabVIEW marketing, where I found out I can talk, for better or for worse. Then I decided to go to Cirrus Logic for a couple of years, and that's where I became the LabVIEW framework architect. My role was to make validation engineers successful by creating frameworks that made their lives easier. They could do what they wanted to do, which is the engineering, without having to fight the software. So I got the chance to make their lives better. It was phenomenal. I became a certified LabVIEW architect in 2014, LabVIEW champion in 2017. If you're unfamiliar with the Champions program, feel free to hit me up. It's a fantastic program. Became a Center of Excellence tech lead at Cirrus Logic. Moved to Compose Systems for a year, great bunch of guys. And then I got the harebrained idea that I could do this consulting gig on my own. That was a fantastic adventure. And since then, I have joined DMC as a senior project engineer. So I get to do all the cool things of engineering and project management without any of the hassle of actually business ownership, like, finding my own healthcare insurance and legal and being a CPA. So I get to work with some incredible people at DMC. Last thing, we'll talk about this in just a second, but I'm the founder and the president and treasurer of the LabVIEW community's first, but not only, nonprofit organization, G Central. All right, throughout my career, I've been able to identify two sentences from which all that I do springs. These are my two I believe statements, and it's going to paint the backdrop for the rest of this presentation. I believe, as scientists and engineers, we get to cause incredible impact in this world, almost more than anybody else can, from individuals to across the entire globe. That is an incredible call. That is an incredible power that we uniquely have as scientists and engineers. This might be a little bit too much information, but I'm in the middle of a condo remodel right now, and I'm actually living in the condo while I'm getting the remodel done. I didn't have a sink for 5 weeks. There's an engineer out there who figured out how to pipe running water, and I'm very thankful to that engineer. And all of us should be. We get running water that's clean. For 6 weeks, I didn't have, again, maybe too much information, I didn't have a toilet. I am so thankful for the engineer who created toilets and sewer systems. We're in a room right now that's comfortable and air conditioned because an engineer or a series of engineers figured all this out. We can see in here. There's a projection screen. The NASA Space Launch System. What? We live in an incredible world where we all get direct benefit from science and engineering. That is amazing. I hope that as you describe your job, the phrase "get to" permeates your description all over the place. And if not, I want you to pause and remember, why did you get into engineering to begin with? Because it's rewarding. And we're going to talk about how to actually get back to that reward. But that's the first I believe statement. We can cause incredible impact. And the only thing better than a scientist or engineer causing impact is when we get to do it together. And the reason why is because I can't know everything. None of us can. This world is way too vast and way too complex. I need you. I need to use your work. And I want to contribute my work to you so that we can cause more of a dramatic impact more rapidly. When you stop to consider what goes on inside of here, the man years, the person years that it takes to put this together, the vast disciplines, nobody's doing this on their own. And this changes people's lives. It's incredible. I believe this so much, this idea of collaboration, that I started a nonprofit organization whose whole entire purpose is to remove barriers of collaboration in the LabVIEW community. I want to enable the LabVIEW community to make the best version of itself. That's what G Central is, gcentral.org. If you've not gotten the chance to check it out, please feel free to talk to me, visit our website. Its whole entire purpose, implementing infrastructure to removing barriers for collaboration so we can all work together. One of our initiatives is actually called the GID Exchange. If you've ever been to the LabVIEW ID Exchange, this is where we as a community can start talking about, man, I wish LabVIEW could blah, blah, blah. And I might take some of those ideas and implement them. The GID Exchange is like that, married together with a Kickstarter. So as the idea suggester, you can set like a $1 threshold, and then the community can start to fund that idea. Once the threshold is met, G Central will go and hire consultants to bring that tool into existence, and then that tool or body of code is owned by the NI community in perpetuity. That's how much I believe in collaboration. G Central's not the only game in town, not by any stretch of the imagination. We have other initiatives. GDevCon. This is kind of sort of a replacement for what NI Week used to be, as well as CLA conferences and such, and it's completely community-led. If you haven't gotten the chance to go to GDevCon, please do. I know that we've got a number of presenters from GDevCon in the audience here. So again, it's fantastic. Collaboration is not just in person or with this G Central. We've also got VIPM.io. This is where VI packages can be uploaded. Your work, you can upload to the world so that people can actually find and use it. Collaboration, it's key. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention NI's very generous contribution of LabVIEW Community Edition. This is the free, unfettered, full professional version of LabVIEW. No strings attached, except for non-commercial use. Outside of that, you can do whatever you want with it. builds executables. It's the professional version. You can get it today. So that's the backdrop. I believe we get to do amazing things. That's our career. And then we get to do it with other people. And we need other people. That's our career and collaboration. That's the canvas on which I'm going to be painting the rest of this presentation. And here are the 7 lessons that I've learned. We're going to talk about each one of these. These are just the little clips. Choose where you work every day. There are only 2 reasons why anybody works anywhere. You have exactly 3 options if you find yourself in a situation you don't like, and know the value of your work. Okay, that's career. Then we're going to get into collaboration. Communicate in diamonds. What does that mean? We'll talk about it. Cadence and clarity, and then the power of silence. So we're going to start with career. Choose where you work every day. If you choose, I don't mean choose to work, unless you're financially independent, you're going to have to have a job, right? But you don't have to have your specific job at your specific company that you're at right now. You're choosing that every day. And if you feel like you're not choosing it, you lose a sense of ownership, and therefore your passion gets sapped. If you have no passion for what you're doing, your creativity is going to tank. The quality of what your work is going to, what's going to do is, and then the impact ultimately is lost. If there's no impact in your work, I promise you in 10 years, you're going to look back on your life and go, what am I doing with my life? What's the actual impact? That's because you probably, it's possible you feel held for ransom for whatever reason at the company that you're at. So consciously choose to work where you're at or choose somewhere else, but choose where you work. You have the power for that. After all, you are writing the story of your career. And by the way, your career is bigger than the company that you're working at right now. This is the thing that you own. This is a story that you are writing. Choose the company that will be the easiest to write the story you want to tell. I suspect there's going to be a lot of conversation, a lot of questions, and that's totally fine. This could be a really quick presentation. We might not even get to the end. Just all depends. If you have questions, shoot up your hands. Just go, wait, what did you mean? We're tracking so far? Am I doing all right? All right. Okay. In the case where you're like, well, this actually happened to me. I used to work at a company where I was like, you know what, I can't, there's no way I could leave. I guess I just need to suck it up and deal with where I'm at right now and just, I felt like nobody knew me. So that's one of the reasons why I felt like I was handcuffed at my current job. Who would ever hire me? What have I ever, I had no sense of branding. I had no sense of messaging out to the world. Nobody knew me because I didn't invest in that. But here's a pro tip. One little thing that you can do, pick a picture and have that picture show up everywhere. This is your LinkedIn profile. This is the avatar in the ni.com community. This is your JKI profile so that it's associated with your VI packages. This is the image that is you. Okay, so that's super quick. That's like 30 seconds. Something small like that. What do you want to be known for? When people think of your name, what do you want them to say about you? You need to engineer that. Okay, so these are my 3 statements. When you think of me, this is what I hope that you think about me. My 3 greatest strengths. I love creating solutions that have immediate value, but with long-term impact. Love that. Connecting experts together because I believe in collaboration to solve complex problems because that's the world that we live in. It's complex. I love asking real, meaningful questions that lead to concrete and constructive answers. This is what I want you to think about when you think of me. And here's something I'd suggest. Whatever those 3 or 4 or 2 statements are about you, position them in terms of you serving somebody else. And you're going to hear that a couple of different times in this presentation. Nobody likes it when we brag, right? But what our accomplishments are also noteworthy. So how do you talk about your accomplishments in a way that you're not bragging? You position your accomplishments as a means to serve other people. I got the chance to write an API that controls Confluence in LabVIEW, and I'm making life easier for all these people at work. This one person said that I saved them 15 minutes. I'm making all this up, by the way. And it made my day to know I made somebody else's life better. Okay, cool. So I'm positioning this in terms of service. That's how you talk about your career and your accomplishments. Elsewise, it's bragging. We'll get to that again. Side note, I want to do a shout out to Larry Hawkins. When I was at NI, this gentleman came in and did a little bit of career counseling with a whole bunch of us. And it was through a series of workshops with him that I came up with those 3 value statements. So you reach out to this guy, it's fantastic. I haven't talked with him in like, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. He made an impact on me, and its impact has lasted to today. You just saw it. Those 3 value statements, that was a day-long session with him. Oh, something else I forgot. At the pro tip where it says always be cultivating, that's kind of goofy grammar, kind of sort of, but I did that intentionally. Because if I said just cultivate options, well, when? Always. Always. You are in a state of cultivating options through branding, which is never done, and through awareness, which is never done. You might be having the pinnacle of your career. That's when you update your resume. That's when it's always something we should be doing so that we always have options. And at that point, when you show up to work every day, it's not because you have to show up to that job. It's because you choose to, because you love it. If you love it, you're passionate about it. If you're passionate about it, your work will have an impact. And then impact will give you meaning and a sense of purpose. All right. How do people learn your name? Volunteer, help others. Like going on to the ni.com community forums. There's tons of questions being asked out there. Go answer some. People, oh man, I gotta be careful with my time. One of the coolest things I got to do when I was in R&D was a small how do you use LabVIEW presentation. And I remember before the session started, I got the chance to sit at a table with a couple of clients. And they said, man, I wish there was a way I could like do the same thing over and over again, but I just find that I take the section of code and I copy it over and over again. I was like, have you heard of a while loop? They're like, no. I promise you, you know more than you realize that you do. Go on these forums, answer a couple of questions. When you do that, your name will become recognized. Has anybody heard of Altenbach on the community forums? How many posts does he have? Anybody?
40,000.
40,000 posts. That man talks and the room goes silent because everybody knows to listen to him. He's established his authority through helping others. People are aware of him. Same thing, VI packages. This is a means for you to package code that's useful for others and distribute it. That's awesome. Open source repositories, share your work. Go to GDevCon, do presentations. Volunteer, G-Central, we got lots of work to do. And for all of the volunteers, both in GDevCon and G-Central, the board of directors, and everybody else who volunteers, thank you for your time. You're giving of your time and your talent, and some of you, your treasure. And that's meaningful. Share what you're doing on LinkedIn. And again, if you post on LinkedIn, position whatever it is that you're posting as serving somebody else. Like, hey, I found something that was useful in LabVIEW. Did you know that? Save somebody some time by putting a tip out there. Awareness. Again, don't brag. That's self-centered. People will turn you off immediately, and all of the trust that you garner over time will get eaten by you bragging, I promise. Because people, when you brag, you are telling people, I don't care about you, I care about me. If that's the case, why would you ever listen to me? Because I don't have your best interest in mind. However, if I'm serving, then you know I have your best interest in mind, and you'll likely listen to what I have to say. So position your accomplishments in terms of how you get to impact and serve somebody else versus how it only benefits you. Questions? Seem reasonable? Okay. Speaking of choosing where you work, this is something I've found to be very helpful, a framework. There are only 2 reasons why anybody works anywhere. And I'll volunteer up front. I'm oversimplifying when I say some of this stuff, but this is what I'd suggest. There are only 2 reasons why anybody works anywhere. Number one, for whatever reason, the company that you're working at, for their reasons, on a daily basis, chooses to extend to you an invitation. For whatever reason, that's their choice. And they're saying, I want you. And I think an appropriate response is, thank you. Thank you. Because you don't actually have a right to work there or actually a right to work anywhere. This is an opportunity. This is something we get to do. So there's, I think, gratitude and thankfulness. Thumbs up. That's reason one. Reason number two, you understand what's being asked of you at that job. You understand that very complex word, compensation. You weigh the two, and you feel like they're in alignment. That's it. Those are the only two reasons anybody works anywhere. Everything else, it's all secondary, tertiary. It all boils down to these two things. And so that means if either of those two conditions fails for whatever reasons, you shake hands and you part ways. This is business. And here's some examples I love giving. Let's imagine that the worst happens. Maybe the United States goes into recession, there's a global economic crisis, and your company has to go through layoffs, and you get laid off. This is sad, but there's been no evil perpetrated upon you. You can't shake your fist at the company. They had to make a business decision. They let you go. At the same time, let's imagine that you come to NI Connect, or somebody reaches out to you on LinkedIn. And there's something, maybe it's a change in location, a different city, maybe it's more money. Maybe it's a change of the actual daily tasks that you do. And that shifts those scales a little bit, or enough to make you move. That's fine. This is business. This is business. So, only two reasons why anybody works anywhere: you're chosen and you choose. Let's imagine that you're at work and there's maybe those scales are starting to shift a little bit. And you're like, I don't like the way things are going here. And that happens at any company. There is no perfect company, I promise. You have exactly three choices in that case. You cause change. You change. You leave. That's it. Three choices. Now, it's super easy to just, I'm out of here, right? Before you go, I promise you the grass is always greener on the other side. I said beforehand that this notion of compensation, it's complex. Yes, it's money, I get that. It's who you get to work with. There are personal relationships that you form at any company. There's the commute to work. Maybe you don't commute to work. There's all kinds of forms of compensation. And whenever you go to a new company, you are starting from scratch, which maybe that could be a good thing. That was a good thing in my career at one point. But you're gonna have to go learn all new systems. How do they organize their information? What's their terminology? Startup is a pain. Grass is always greener. Just part of your consideration, should you choose to pull that trigger at the very end. Let's talk about the other two first. You cause change directly. That means you've identified a problem, you're rolling up your sleeves, and you personally are going to be the agent of change. Now, depending on the size of that change, if it's pretty large, you might have to make a business case and convince your employer to fund you. And at that stage, you're asking for them to trust you. Help them understand the cost and the value. If there's something about the company that you don't like, you can't walk up to them and say, I don't like this. What? Why should they care, right? As opposed to, I feel like as a business, we could be operating with more efficiency if we did these three things. Give me a chance to try it out. Yesterday we had was it the leadership forum, or it was one of the forums. We were talking about how you bring about change inside of an organization. That was a 3-hour session. So this is not easy, but if you want to stay at a company, you're not satisfied with what's going on there, cause change directly. A little bit of story time. So at DMC, I decided to do this very thing. At Cirrus Logic, I got exposed to a technology called Confluence. I'm curious, has anybody heard of Confluence beforehand? Got a couple hands going up in the audience, that's right. This is a means of capturing information, organizing it, evolving it, and disseminating it. We had a way of doing that at DMC, but I wanted to propose that there was a better way of doing it. Well, this is a large change. How we capture our information and share it at an organization, that's no small feat. So I was like, I think there could be a better way. I made a business case, and this is actually the landing page to the business case that I made to try and convince leadership to invest and maybe use Confluence. I broke it down into what's the purpose and the summary of this document, what's the problem, how are we going to build on our old mistakes? Can I point to old mistakes that this thing is going to solve? What's the ultimate impact? And as we evaluate Confluence, how do we know if we're headed the right direction? So I put together quarterly reports where I was gathering data from Google Analytics and looking at who was visiting what pages and how, whatever. The whole entire point was I was demonstrating success to see, do we want to roll this out across the entire company? So, good news, about 3 months ago, 2-3 months ago, DMC decided to adopt Confluence. That was a 2-year venture on my part. So when you want to cause change, go in it for the long haul if you're really serious about it. Okay? And that's if you want to directly cause change. As a side note, I have a lot of open source toolkits out there. I actually have a LabVIEW API that lets you programmatically control and work with Confluence. So if you want to programmatically generate a page or programmatically generate documentation on your code, there's your API. And all of my APIs, it's all MIT. So have a field day, MIT license. Questions on that? Right on. Like I said, whenever you make a business case to an organization and then they choose to invest in you, they're trusting you. They didn't have to. So I want to say thank you to DMC for trusting me with this initiative. And specifically, thank you to Jesse Bacci for believing in me and championing me to upper leadership. Do we have any other folks from DMC in the room? I saw a couple. There we go. Over there in the back. Is Jesse back over there too? Yeah. So if you guys have not gotten the chance to meet Jesse Bacci, an incredible gentleman. Fantastic. I actually get the chance to report to him at DMC. All right, you can cause change directly. You can cause change indirectly. Maybe you're not the one who's rolling up your sleeves to actually implement the initiative, but maybe your company has a feedback mechanism, a suggestion box. Maybe if your company has a whole bunch of internal tools, God willing, they have maybe an internal Jira where you can file issues or something maybe on GitHub. File the issue, right? Cause change indirectly. Now, there's a balance, and I have not necessarily struck this well at DMC, and the folks in the back are going to be laughing. Finish this sentence off. The squeaky wheel gets the
axe.
The axe. That's exactly what I was hoping somebody was going to say. We all want to say grease, right? Okay, well, the really squeaky wheel, you lose political currency if you gripe a little bit too much. So you have to find that balance. But if you say nothing, nothing is going to change. So cause change indirectly. That's option 1. All right, option 2. You change. You change. That doesn't mean that you grudgingly change. That doesn't mean that you go kicking and screaming. That means that you adopt whatever the thing is. God forbid, if we ever abandoned LabVIEW at DMC to switch over to Python, I don't know what I would do. Right? Not that there's any chance that we're going to do that. But if we did, here are my options. And if I decide to stay, I will become a Python champion because I'm changing. By the way, complaining about a problem without posing a solution is what's called whining. Don't do that. Okay, so in my first presentation, we talk about how to build trust. Whining is one of the quickest ways to lose it. And beforehand, I said that there are only 2 reasons why anybody works anywhere. One of those is because you got an invitation on a daily basis. You whine, and that invitation might turn into an invitation to leave, not to stay. Okay? So, raise problems, do it in a constructive way, cause change either directly or indirectly. Put some sweat equity into this. You might have to pull a couple of extra hours, but you are going to get the chance to create the company that you want to work at. And if you position that company as in terms of service of everybody else, there's a higher chance for your idea getting adopted. Okay, how am I doing? All right?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Great. I don't have much more to say about this. This one's straightforward. If you don't like it, if you don't love it, leave it. Okay? That's it. Now, in my humble opinion, any company that does not have a mechanism that you can exercise to cause change, there are better places where you can write the story of your career. So let that be a test for an organization. Are they willing to embrace continuous improvement? If not, I suggest there are better places. One of the things there's lots of things I love about DMC. This is one of the things I love about DMC. We can implement new ideas. We can cause change. And that way we can make this company even more amazing than it actually already is. All right, here's the last thing for your career. Know the value of your work. I think that this is typically called the value proposition of whatever it is that you do, or for your company, whatever it is that you're selling. And here's what I've seen. The number of people, number of scientists and engineers who can explain how it works is typically through the roof. The number of scientists and engineers who can explain what it does is, it's all right. But the number of them that can tell you why it's important, What's the value of a hammer? How would you go about answering that question? Here's what I suspect. Most of us. Well, the value of a hammer is that it obeys Newton's principles so that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and the properties of metal and inelasticity allow me to drive a nail. No, that's not the value of a hammer. That's how it works. It allows me to put a nail into wood. No, that's not the value of a hammer. That's what it does. It enables a person to turn an idea into a structure in an efficient and relatively cheap way, or cheap implementation, whatever. Here's what I found. Value propositions, I think that's my next slide. Value propositions, the true value of your work always terminates on a person trying to do a thing. Whatever that is, I don't know. Everything else is how it works, which is important. Everything else is what it does, which is important. But what is of ultimate value is who it enables to do what task. And that's why I actually like agile user stories. Has anybody not heard of agile user stories, or anybody done agile stories before? Okay, this is something that, again, I feel so bad for a lot of the people at DMC because I keep on banging these things into people's heads. As a persona, as a technician, as an operator, as a manager, as a person, I need a feature, don't know what that feature is, so that I can. Somebody comes to me and says, Chris, can you add a button on a UI? Sure, help me understand what you need it for. Well, I need to click it pretty often. No, I got that. Why? Well, this also helps justify investment. If I can say, well, if I press that button, then I can save time and money. Okay, now you got my attention, because I promise you, from a business perspective, everything boils down, in private sector, everything boils down to time and money. Time and money, time and money. All right, something else. By understanding the value proposition of your work, that is who you're serving for what task, that gives your work meaning. Because you see, when I do a thing, I'm making somebody else's life better. I promise you that's rewarding. The other thing is, it instills confidence in the person that you're trying to convince that you can do a pretty good job. So, I want to use that as a little bit of a bridge. DMC was recently awarded an opportunity by Northrop Grumman to work on the NASA Space Launch System Booster Obsolescence Life Extension Program. First off, that's a mouthful. This is incredibly rewarding work. Oh my gosh, this just happened like 2-3 months ago. We are absolutely thrilled. How did we convince Northrop Grumman to entrust us with that opportunity? What value propositions did we make? First thing I want to point out is this is clearly incredibly meaningful work. This is part of humanity's journey to the stars, and we get to participate in that. And again, one of the reasons why I love working at DMC is, yes, this is meaningful work in aerospace and defense. DMC gets to work in lots of really cool application spaces. Aerospace and defense is just one of them. But one of the things I love doing is being in any one of these applications and figuring out whose life do I get to touch. Very meaningful work that I get to participate in at DMC. What do we do? This is clearly an oversimplification. Oftentimes, there's a whole entire rack or series of racks of hardware, either in a single location or distributed across entire factory floors that we will design, lock, stock, and barrel. That's the hardware aspect, clearly important. Then we pair it together with software. In our group at DMC, which is the test and measurement group, we heavily rely on the NI toolchain, LabVIEW, Veristand, Teststand, and we put together complex UIs to control that hardware. Great, that's software. I tend to concentrate on the software aspect of our projects as a senior project engineer. Who cares about software? What's the value proposition of software? And how did we win Northrop's trust? I stole something from Alan Smith. And this is the singular sentence that I always start off our software presentations with at a design phase. Software exists to change people's workflows. There's the value proposition. It terminates on a person trying to do a task. Everything stems from here. This is literally where we start the presentation. And then we say, who are you, end user at Northrop Grumman, who's going to be testing this? We listened to you, and here are the people that we identified. There are managers, there are technicians, and there are operators. And we heard that you're trying to do I just convinced them that we understand what they care about. That understanding paired with our expertise equals success. They bought it. They bought it. And clearly now we have to deliver, and I'm confident that we will. But the whole entire point is we showed the value based on a person or a group of people trying to do a task. And this is the software side of it, which I love. Anyways, so my thanks to Alan. We use this every time. One other tactic that we use throughout our sales phase or our sales, as we discuss our designs, at any major transition, we'll say, here's the person we're trying to serve, and here's the task that we think that you need. As an operator on the ground, I need an emergency stop button so that I can preserve the life of the operator next, whatever. Great, that's the story. Let me show you our designs that meet that story. And that's how we run our entire presentation. Questions on career before we move on to communication. There's lots of stuff I could say on careers. All right. Move on to the second thing I'm very passionate about, which is communication. And again, this is all with the backdrop of my I believe statement. As scientists and engineers, we get to do amazing stuff at incredible companies. Choose the company. Talked about all that. Now we get to work with people and collaborate. Here's that link to the CLA Summit where I gave the foundation, which is trust. I'm going to give you a little bit more. So you've got to build trust. Who do you need to build trust with? I suggest 4 audiences. I didn't already say this, did I? I don't think so. 4 audiences that you have to build trust with. The first, most often overlooked audience and most important audience is yourself. If you don't trust yourself, no one else is going to trust what you have to say. Now, there's more things that you have to do, and then how do you go about gaining trust? But I think that the other 3 audiences are your coworkers, your manager, and upper management in your company. That's just 4 examples of different groups you need to gain trust with. How do you go about gaining trust with those people? Presentation. How do you go about losing trust with those people? Presentation. All right. A large part of this is, it centers around communication. Communication. Let's talk about communicating in diamonds. Here's what I mean. Start with your point. Provide data. Synthesize the data. End with your point. Everybody here is like, well, yeah, how else are you going to do it? Well, I've written tons of emails. I've started tons of conversations. I've received tons of emails where it's, hi Chris, I was wondering if I could get a couple minutes of your time. I've got a problem inside of my program where I have a DVR that's referencing a class that has another reference. And I find that what do you need? Do you need me to help you with something? Start with your point. And here, provide data, provide rationale, and with your point. Oh, if you start with your point, it's going to improve your listeners' engagement because first off, they can assimilate all of that data in terms of your end goal. It's like, oh, I understand why you're telling me about the DVR because there's a memory leak that's crashing your program. Turns out it has nothing to do with the DVR. It's actually something else or whatever. You get the idea. Or maybe your point, they're already aware of it and agree with you. You don't need to say anything else. Time is precious, right? So if they don't know the journey that you're about to take them on and you just start going at it, I promise you they're gonna lose interest real quick and that's this squirrel thing over here. You're gonna lose their attention. And if they do stick around, there's gonna be this, I suspect, growing sense of resentment because it's like, I'm paying you in time and effort. When does this stop? When do we get to the point, right? Tell them what the journey is first. I need your help to solve this problem. Here's what I found. I believe based on what I found, here's what the solution could be. What do you think? Okay. Starting with the point respects your listener. Again, maybe they already know your point. Don't waste their time. Value the attention that somebody gives to you. They don't owe you their attention. One of the things that I'll tell folks at work and just kind of in general, the more senior you get in your career, the more people need your help and who rely on you, which means your inbox becomes this dreaded thing that you have to deal with. 100 emails. I'm going to start at the top of my email list and I'm going to give you 5 seconds in the subject line. If within 5 seconds of the subject line, I can't determine what you need or how I can help next, because I have to prioritize. I've got all of these things that I've got to do. If in that subject line, you've got my attention, what you just got is 15 more seconds. I'm going to start reading at the top of your email. I'm going to see what specifically can I do to help. If the email chain or the email block is like this big, I'm going to cry first off. And I'm going to look at the top for just something that, what are you looking for? And if it's not there, I'm going to look at the bottom. And if it, next. We all do this. And I hate to admit it. But what sucks is, here, I think it's in the next slide. Yeah, why don't we start with a point? And then we'll talk about the consequences in just a second. I'm going to wrap up what I was just saying with the email. Maybe we don't start with a point because as the communicator, we didn't actually plan the conversation. And so we don't know how to start. So I'm just going to tell you what I know and I'm going to synthesize as I'm talking and then I'll finally get to my point. And that makes sense as the communicator. That's not what your listener needs to know. Your listener has lots of different things that they're trying to keep track of and they're evaluating, am I making a good use of my time? They need to know the point up front. As the communicator, I care about telling the story. As the listener, I need to know, is this a good use of my time? So value, put yourself in your listener's shoes. Bullet point 2 is what I was getting to with the emails. It takes mental resources and time to process what you have to say, and we're evaluating what you're saying in the context of all the other things I've got to do. And sometimes that means I'm going to ignore your email. Sorry. Help me not ignore your email. Tell me what's up front first. A scale of 1 to 10, how controversial is that? Where 10 is like, you're crazy. Am I crazy? Am I doing all right? All right. Put yourself in your listener's shoes. That's really the thesis statement. Communicate in diamonds. All right. You present data in that phase. Really, present data. Data means it's non-subjective. If somebody else was to look at that thing, whatever it is, they would agree that that number is 5. It's not kind of 5. It's not smells like 5. It's 5. It's objective. Avoid subjective words like, this is better than this. That's a characterization. That's subjective. Based on what criteria? You'll like it. We feel, that's nice. I believe, that's all subjective. That comes during maybe synthesis based off of logic and rationale. Based on the data, since X, then Y. The data suggests, I recommend. There's a Confluence template that we put together at DMC. It's called Decision Behind the Design. Very simply, what's the problem? What are the options? For each option, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Which option did we select and why? For each major architectural design, we use that template, and that has saved our bacon on more occasions than I can tell you. All right, once you're done, end with the point. It should be a clear call to action. Is there a specific question? A single sentence question would be ideal, right? Do you have a recommendation and solicit a response? I recommend we do X. Do you agree? End with your point. Moving into another segment of communication. Have you guys ever just noticed that you can listen to somebody and what they say sticks? Like, why? What's going on there? I've thought about this a lot. I've got a couple stories in here. I think that there are a lot of facets to somebody's speaking that lend themselves to my words getting stuck in your head. There's two that I want to highlight. Cadence and clarity. Okay, by cadence, I mean the rate at which a concept is introduced. Not necessarily how fast I'm talking, though. Right? You talk too fast, you're going to lose somebody, I promise. What I mean is the rate at which a body of information that makes sense as an atomic unit gets spit out to you, or that you see. So what I'm getting at here is these ideas that I'm trying to introduce come in the form of sound waves in the air or images. Your body has to take that information and through transducers turn it into electrical signals that your brain can then form images in the mind, and that engages your will. Do I agree? Do I disagree with that? If I agree with it, I might keep it. If not, or I didn't understand it, I'm going to trash it. That happens at the speed of light. Super quick, right? Well, here's what I've noticed. The cadence, the rate at which I introduce a concept gives you time to form an image in your mind and then evaluate it, to kind of mull it over a little bit. I've actually been trying to do it here. There's a couple of techniques that I use to put that metronome in place. Silence is one of them. I would argue that silence in conversation or presentation is one of the most powerful things that you can do. I don't know how many of you can read sheet music. If not, it's totally fine. I'm about to make my debut singing career. Brace yourself. Here's the question. What is the most powerful sound you're about to hear? Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. I would argue the silence between those notes allows you to process those notes, provides contrast, clears the palate so that you get that next phrase. Now, if I had sung it, dun 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 dun, which is that comes later on in the symphony, that carries along with it its own special sort of thrust. But all of us remember dun 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 dun. All of us do, and I suggest it's because of the rest. It's the rest. Let's see if. Why are we afraid of silence? Because, I'm just going to suggest two reasons. I think there's probably a lot of reasons. Before I go there, do you all think that we are oftentimes afraid of silence? And what do you all think those reasons could be? Shout outs from the audience.
It's awkward.
Awkward.
How long of a silence are we talking about? Short silence? Long silence is definitely awkward.
So imagine that I'm talking, and then I have something else I want to say about that length. Most of us start talking and they're like, well, I'm not quite sure what I want to say next, but I'm thinking that it could be something along the lines like, hold on just a second, I'm going to get. Let there be silence. Here's what I suggest. It makes us look unintelligent as the speaker because it's like, oh God, I don't have a plan of what I'm supposed to say. They're going to think I'm an idiot. It's fine. And I think that we're oftentimes afraid that somebody's going to interrupt. Now, how do you get around that? We'll talk about number one in just a second. The whole entire bit about it allows for interruption. This is where hand gestures can come in real handy. I'm Italian. I talk with these. It's pretty great. I can start motioning and I can say, you know what? I've got 3 different ideas. The first of which is A. The second, so what I'm telling you, I'm not done talking yet. Somebody might go, oh, they might try and interject. I'm like, oh, hold on just a second. I care about what you have to say. Got 2 other things. Give me just a second. Oftentimes, the reason why people will try and interject, and I do this, I talk way the heck too much, right? So as you're presenting, as you're carrying on conversation, as much as you can, try not to bulldoze somebody with a whole bunch of information. Involve them in your conversation. Ask them, what do you think about this? How might you do this different? Whatever. You get the idea. Elsewise, yeah, of course they're going to want to try and interrupt you. Makes us look unintelligent. As if we're afraid of silence and we just start filling the air with words, those words, they're not necessarily a clear representation of what you mean to say. You just felt under pressure to get a word out there, and it's unclear, unintentional, and inaccurate. Words have meaning. Words have meaning. I feel like we've lost this in general. Words have meaning. What you say matters. What you write matters. When you use words that don't actually make sense or don't convey what you mean, you're muddying the waters. It's better that you're silent at that point. Find the words that accurately convey the idea that you mean. Now, one of the things that I recommend as a tactic is, as much as you can, use nouns, avoid pronouns. Pronouns cause confusion, because if I it that one, you to death, you know, what it are you referring to again? I don't know, I've actually seen this happen before. Like I'll call, I'll spare you that story. Words are hard. The older I get, the more I appreciate poetry. When I was in middle school and high school, I thought poetry was the stupidest thing ever. There are ways that we can use words to form images in your listener's mind that will stick with them. Words have meaning. Words are powerful. Words are hard. How do you pick the right word? Here's some suggestions. Listen to other TED Talks. These people are typically very talented speakers. How do they represent ideas? It's almost like writing code. How did somebody else solve the asynchronous communication problem? Is it publish and subscribe? Is it broadcast? Is it by cues? How did they do it? Same thing with words. How did somebody else represent a sales opportunity? What words did they use? Reading. And that's, I just did it. I was afraid of silence. Anyways, this could go science fiction. It could go technical. It doesn't matter. How are people turning thoughts into words in a way that makes sense to you? I read Harry Potter. I think it's a great series. It's a lot of fun. Writing. And that's where you will only ever be the person who reads what you write. So there's no pressure. It's just you exercising the thought to word converter. The biggest way that you lose somebody or get an idea out of somebody's head, I think, is if you introduce non sequiturs. So this is when I'm supposedly leading you on a train of thought, but A doesn't actually follow B, and then I call you into account. Like, clearly, because the sky is blue, and that has to do with light refraction, therefore projectors should project light. Don't you agree? I made two statements that don't follow each other, and then I called you into account to agree with me. One, that's going to really make me angry. And 2, I'm never going to remember that. I don't even actually remember what I just said. Something about projectors, I think. Avoid non sequiturs. Take your time to form the logical statements. Make sure the words inside of each statement has the meaning you intend to convey. Take your time. Oh, this is one of the other advantages of silence. You give yourself the chance to choose the word that you intend to use versus just finding something that quickly pops into your head. So now, oh man, all right. Clarity, avoid filler words, all right. Okay, this is the last thing. This is a demonstration of telling a story using some of the tips and tactics that I've just described. In 5 minutes? All right, here we go. This actually happened. So I got the incredible opportunity to go to the French Laundry. I love food. I love food. I love celebrating somebody else's creativity with amazing dishes. If you've never heard of the French Laundry before, it's a restaurant out in Napa Valley, California. My uncle took me out there. Now it's a 3 Michelin star restaurant. That is like the top rating in the world. So this place is amazing. It took us 6 months to get on the wait list for a 3-month reservation later. 9 months total. And that was my uncle calling every day for 6 months because my uncle's retired. Thank you, my uncle. The day arrives. We drive out to Napa Valley. I still remember this. And we get to the parking lot area of the French Laundry. I remember looking at it, and I was wholly unimpressed. I thought to myself, that's it? It looks like a small cottage. Yeah, I mean, the vines outside are well kept, but I'm waiting to be impressed. Let's walk in and find out what happens. So we walk in, and it was like I entered a completely different world. The interior was what you would imagine, pristine, clean. You walked in and you felt like this is going to be something to remember. And it was. We were one of the first parties there. And so as the fixed menu was coming out, everybody else kind of got to see what they were going to be getting on their plates. So we sit down, all of us are looking at each other, there's this anticipation. And that night, there was one signature element that all the other plates revolved around. Truffles. Oh my gosh, I'd never heard of a truffle before, really. But what they did is they brought out this ornate wood box, and the servers just kind of looked at us, and they had this closed wooden box, and everybody else in the restaurant started getting silent, and then they opened it. And there was this waterfall of perfume, waterfall of aroma that just permeated along the floor into everybody's nostrils. The room went dead silent. Everybody smelled that, and they were like, I cannot wait. Now, we were getting served at that point. The servers had just gotten through putting a white plate of pasta with a white cream up on top. And the servers open this box, everybody goes silent, the aroma in our nostrils. And the server says, now I'm going to shave these truffles onto your plate. I was like, okay, sounds great. Pulls out a truffle, goes over my shoulder, and starts shaving. And I'm like, now this is getting awkward. And I actually said this, do I tell you when to stop? He said, nope. He just kept on going. Before you know it, I have these wafer thin, beautiful shavings of truffle sitting on top of this plate. And I took my first bite, and I'll never forget it. It was phenomenal. It's almost like if you paired the intensity of dark chocolate and the velvety smoothness with savory, just the essence of savory, and you put them together on top of pasta. I took my first bite, I rolled it around inside of my mouth, I swallowed, I paused, I took a sip of wine, cleansed my palate, and I got to do it all over again on my next bite, over and over until it was done. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. That was the first course. There were 11 courses left. What an incredible night. Scene. How did I do? Were you there?
Yeah.
What were the colors of the sheets on the table? How comfortable was the seat when you sat in it? When you picked up the silverware in your hand, what did it feel like? I hoped to actually form images in your mind so that you could be there with me. Because I moderated my speech. I used words like waterfall of aroma. Could you see it in your head permeating the room? Do you actually want to see it?
Yeah.
That's the French Laundry. And again, from the exterior, it's like, oh, that's quaint. There's our box of truffles. And again, when they opened that, you would not believe what it smelled like. Incredible. Okay? Wonderful. Now, I told you a story, And oftentimes we don't tell stories like this in our presentations. We're talking about graphs and charts and how actors relate to each other. I promise you, if you want something to stick in your listener's head, tell it in a story. I don't care if it's technical or not. Okay? In short, don't make the mistakes that I made in my career. Everything that I just told you not to do or to do, I've done the opposite, and it's cost me a lot of pain. So I hope to save you all from the trials that I've caused myself sometimes. That's all I have to say about that. Questions, thoughts, concerns? Anything?
Damn, I'm hungry now.
That's right. If you're hungry, if you're visiting Austin and you'd like some food suggestions, I know tons of them downtown. Hit me up. All right? Thanks, everybody.